everyone. I'm Binghan Li. Our project is about Frankenstein, and we are mainly looking at appearance and social rejection. The main question we want to ask is pretty simple. Is the creature born a monster, or does he become one because of the way people treat him? We focus on both Mary Shelley's novel and the 1931 film. What we found interesting is that in both versions, people judge the creature almost right away. They react to how he looks before they really know anything about him. So, for us, this story is not just about horror, it's also about how fear, rejection, and isolation can shape a person. In that way, society is not just reacting to the monster, it's also helping create him. Next. To understand the idea, we also need some context. Frankenstein comes out of the Gothic tradition, and the Gothic stories often deal with fear, danger, and the unknown. They usually focus on things that seem strange, unnatural, or disturbing. The story also reflects early fears about science and creation. People were already worried about what could happen if humans tried to go too far and control life itself. At the same time, the creature is shown as an outsider from the very beginning. He looks different, people are afraid of him, and he is pushed outside normal human society. That outsider position is really important because it helps explain why rejection becomes such a big part of his story. This is where appearance becomes really important. In both the novel and the film, the creature is judged before he is known. People, people don't first try to understand him. Their first response is fear. Because of that, his appearance leads directly to rejection. He is treated like something dangerous instead of someone who could be understood or accepted. Over time, that rejection turns into loneliness, pain, and anger. I think this is one of the most important ideas in Frankenstein because it shows that his feelings doesn't just come from nowhere. A lot of it grows out of being excluded and denied human sympathy. So, this brings us back to our main question. Is the creature naturally evil, or is he shaped by rejection and the lack of human sympathy? Our, our answer is that both the novel and the film suggest society plays a big role in creating the monster. The creature does become violent, but the story asks us to look at what happens before that. He's feared, judged, and shut out again and again. So in the end, Frankenstein is not only a story about a monster, it's also a story about um, prejudice, responsibility, and what can happen when someone is never given care, understanding, or a place of to belong. With that in mind, the next part of our presentation will look more closely at how the 1931 film shows the creature through appearance, fear, and visual horror.
Today I will focus on a film adaptation of Frankenstein and examine how the creature is represented through visual horror and physical appearance. Compared to the novel, the film removes much of the creature's voice and intelligence. He becomes a mostly silent figure, defined by his body and actions rather than his inner life. Without language or self-expression, he is no longer able to explain himself or connect with others. As a result, the audience is least likely to sympathize with him. Instead, He becomes a virtual symbol of horror rather than a complex character. This shift is important because it changes how the audience understands the creature, not through his thoughts or emotions, but through what they say on screen. One of the most iconic elements is the monster's design, especially the makeup worn by Boris Karloff. The flat head, the scars, and the stiff body all contribute to a disturbing and unnatural image. These features make the creature look incomplete, almost like a field experiment rather than a human being. This reflects what we discussed in class, that in early horror movies, physical deformity is often used to signal danger or evil. In other words, the audience is encouraged to fear the creature immediately, even before understanding him. This creates a strong emotional response based on purely on appearance. Another important aspect is how the film uses spatial techniques to create horror. For example, lighting and shadow emphasize the creature's body and make him appear larger and more threatening. The use of contrast between light and darkness also makes the creature seem more mysterious and unnatural. His movements are slow and mechanical, almost like an automaton. In fact, in our lecture, the creature was described as the automaton, a natural man, and an abandoned child. However, the film mainly highlights the first aspect, the creature as something artificial and unnatural, rather than his emotional or human side. As a result, the audience is guided to see him as an object of fear, not as a character with feelings. We can also see how other characters respond to the creature. In the film, villagers quickly turn to collective violence. They chase him, attack him, and treat him as something that must be destroyed. What is important here is not just fear, but the speed and intensity of their reaction. There is no attempt to communicate or understand him. Instead, the creature is immediately pushed outside of society and treated as an outsider. This moment is crucial because it shows that creature is not simply feared, he is excluded, and it is this exclusion that ultimately shapes his identity as a monster. To conclude it, the 1931 film transforms Frankenstein creature into a monster primarily through visual representation. His appearance, combined with the reaction of society, reinforces the idea that he is dangerous and inhuman. This supports our argument that the creature is not inherently evil, but is shaped by how others perceive and treat him.
Hello everyone, I'm going to talk about the creature in the novel. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is far more than just a horror novel. It directly challenges the notion that monsters are merely mindless and terrifying beings. Although classic films usually focus on a growling, terrifying beast, Shelley's original novel portrays a character that is extremely intelligent and sensitive on the inside. If we examine his story from a humanist perspective, we will find that his monster nature is not innate but is imposed later. This can be clearly seen from the trauma he suffered at birth, the way society treated him, and his eventual descent into despair. The tragedy began the moment the monster opened its eyes. This should have been a moment of wonder, but for him it was a nightmare. When Victor Frankenstein saw his creation come back to life, he did not feel the pride of the creator, but instead a sudden strong aversion welled up within him, and he left angrily. Imagine if you came along to this world only to find that the only person who should have created you was looking at you with hateful eyes. From the very beginning, this monster was discarded like garbage. There was no guidance, no kindness, and he could only explore this confusing world alone. This early rejection set the dark and lonely tone for everything that followed. When he was striving to find his place in the world, he encountered endless cruel treatment. People did not hate his actions, but rather his appearance. The most heart-wrenching part of the book lies in the time he spent observing the Lacey family. He spent months secretly helping them, learning their language and truly believing that if he showed his intelligence and kindness, they would accept him. He thought his heart could bridge the gap caused by his appearance. However, when he finally gathered the courage to reveal himself to them, they responded with violence and fear. Shelley wants to convey the strongest message here. Monsters are not born but are created by a society that refuses to recognize their humanity. His emotional journey truly proved that he was not an evil person. At first, he was innocent and full of curiosity about the world. He even had an innate sense of compassion, such as picking firewood for the villagers. After being treated as a monster for many years, his loneliness turned into bitter anger. His desire for a partner was not a threat, but a desperate cry for the connection that all of us long for. When Victor finally destroyed his chance of having a partner, the inner world of this creature completely collapsed. His violent outburst was not an innate reaction but was caused by the long term pain of being abandoned. The ending of the novel leaves us with an unresolved question: who is the true monster? Is it the creature that desires love and being loved, or is it the creator who created life but refuses to take any responsibility? By focusing on the inner world and emotions of the creatures, we realize that Frankenstein is a profound exploration of bias and the basic need for human belonging.
Hi everyone, my name is Haitao Xu, and in this presentation, I will briefly compare the difference between novels and the film adaptations, and conclude with a summary. So the main analysis this time focused on Frankenstein and the film adaptation directed by James Wan. Constance on the difference in characters, themes, and story highlights. Firstly, the novel has written by Mary Shelley in the early 19th century, combining elements of romantics and early science fiction. Although the film is based on this book, due to the different ways of expectation between the films and the novels, as well as the varying performance of the audience. The film has made many adaptations to make it more like a horror film. In terms of the characters, the monster in the novel, is actually quite intelligent and has his emotions. He can learn languages and read books and think about his situations, such as the issue of loneliness and being rejected by others. From a content perspective, he is more like a person who has abandoned by society. However, in the movie, this character become simple. He can speak and learn languages. His main pursuit is to create a terrifying atmosphere rather than explore his inner source. This character, Frankenstein, is also different in both aspects. In the novel, he is complex. On one hand, he loves science, but on the other hand, he feels guilty and under pressure. In the novel, he is more like a crazy scientist, emphasizing the dangers of scientific control, slept out of control. In terms of theme, the novel mainly explores some profound issues such as responsibility, loneliness, and the consequence of science, while the film focuses more on makes the audience feel tense and scared. For instance, through terrifying scenes and visual effects. Finally, it comes to the ending. The novel ends with a Targent emphasizing the characters should be holding their actions, while the ending of the film is more different. It achieves by elements the monster to restore order. This also aligns more with the style of early films. So at the end, I prefer the film because it's more horrible than the novel. So, and that's all. Thank you.